Once upon a time, when we were young, we loved to get lost exploring the forests and castles of bedtime stories. I'm your host, Leah.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Steve. Today, we're diving into the whimsical world of fairy tales and nursery rhymes.
If you have an appetite for the strange and bizarre, then pull up a chair and grab a spoon for another intriguing serving of Remnant Stew. Remnant Stew is gluten-free, organic, made from all natural, free-range ingredients, and guaranteed to provide the recommended daily serving of curiosity.
When we were children, many times we drifted off to sleep to the comforting sound of a bedtime story, being read to us as we nestled in among the warm comfort of our beds. Fairy tales, fables, and nursery rhymes. What are they really, and where did they come from? Are they just whimsical stories designed to carry children off to dreamland? Moral lessons disguised as an entertaining story? Or are they warnings, wrapped in a fanciful tale intended to teach children to remain safe from life's many dangers?
Look out, don't go there.
Such as big bad wolves skulking around in the woods, as well as the kind living next door.
Ooh.
Or perhaps the stories we thrived on as children were actually subversive political diatribe, skillfully hidden in childish rhyme in order to be covertly passed down from generation to generation within the innocuous walls of a child's nursery. There are many different origin theories for the stories and songs that we cut our teeth on, some of them ominous and dark. Let us start off with nursery rhymes, which, according to Wikipedia, is defined as traditional poems or songs for children in Britain and other mostly European countries. Steve, you've got quite a bit of information for us on nursery rhymes, don't you?
Right, nursery rhymes. In researching for this episode, I ran across an excellent article titled "The Fascinating Secret Meanings Behind Nursery Rhymes."
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, no, are we going to get into those hidden societies again?
No secret societies.
No secret societies, but a lot of them do relate to Henry VIII, and oddly enough. Anyway, this article was written by Samantha Belrose on a website that she owns called NurseryRhymeCentral.com. Ms. Belrose has accumulated quite a collection of nursery rhymes and has committed a great amount of research about some of the more obscure and unusual meanings behind them. We are very grateful here at Remnant Stew to Ms. Belrose for allowing us to quote directly from her excellent article. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So to understand the secret meanings of nursery rhymes, it's necessary to go back hundreds of years to when they were first sung or chanted. Since they are the creations of people who lived centuries ago, they reflect their life and times. Nursery rhymes are much older than even the term nursery rhyme itself, which only dates from the late 18th or early 19th century. Some English nursery rhymes go back as far as the 14th century, and some others from the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. For example, the music for the nursery rhyme Three Blind Mice has been found in a compilation of folk songs by Thomas Ravencroft that dates from 1609, so over 400 years.
Wow.
Just for that that little musical ditty there about the Three Blind Mice. Most of the classic nursery rhymes still known today come from the 18th century. Nursery rhymes have a strong oral tradition, and many were sung as folk songs long before they were written down. To Market, to Buy a Fat Hen was first published in 1598. Cock-a-doodle-doo, My Dame Has Lost Her Shoe first appeared in a murder pamphlet in England in 1606.
What?
That got her killed.
Yeah, you can't just say murder pamphlet and keep going. You got to explain what that is.
I don't know. We could just leave them hanging. They have to go find it out.
Well, anyway, murder pamphlets, they were printed documents that recounted purportedly true stories of dark crimes. They ranged from matter-of-fact journalism to sensationalism. And that kind of sounds like cable TV, doesn't it?
It just sounds like the nightly news.
And they called it dark crimes then.
Exactly.
So
anyway, they described crimes of murder, witchcraft, sex, and adultery. Many were accompanied by woodcuts depicting grisly scenes. Illustrated murder pamphlets. The ROUD, Roud Folk Song Index, lists almost 25,000 songs in the English language assembled from oral tradition. This was by librarian Steve Roud.
Wow.
Many nursery rhymes appear in this index because they were sung as folk songs first. In the 16th century, they began to be recorded in English plays. For example, Pat a Cake appears in a 1698 play by Thomas de Earley called The Campaigners. Pat a Cake, The Campaigners.
Baker's Man,
okay.
yeah.
All right. I don't quite get it, but all right, I'll take their word for it. In 1780, Thomas Carnan used the term Mother Goose in connection with nursery rhymes in his compilation titled Mother Goose Melody, or Sonnets for the Cradle. However, it first appeared earlier in the 18th century in a translation of a French fairy tale collection called, I'm going to try to say it in French, but it translates to Tales of My Mother Goose. It later became to be identified with collections of English nursery rhymes and stories, and since then has become synonymous with nursery rhymes. So when we hear Mother Goose, it goes back to the 1700s. In this article, Mrs. Samantha Belrose points out that a lot of the nursery rhymes we learned as toddlers actually weren't meant for children at all.
No, really?
Instead, they started as subversive folk songs or tavern songs, but over time, their actual meanings were forgotten and the catchy tunes were sung to children. All right, so let's break into one here. You've all heard this one. Ring around the rosy, pockets full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more well-known ones that we the meaning of it has kind of gone around the internet.
Ring Around the Rosy is thought to have originated from the Great Plague of London that killed about 100,000 people in 1665. The roses in the rhyme depict the reddish round rash that was a symptom of the bubonic plague, while the pocket full of posies was a bunch of flowers or herbs people would carry to try to ward off the disease and its stench. There are conflicting stories about the ashes. One account states that the ashes are from the numerous funeral pyres that were kept burning in London to dispose of the dead. In another account, the word "atchoo, atchoo, we all fall down" referred to the coughing and sneezing symptoms quickly followed by death. Either way, it's a pretty grim story.
That's right, it is.
Now, I like this one. Three blind mice, see how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a thing in your life as three blind mice?
I mean, just taken right there at face value, that's kind of gruesome anyway.
Yeah, right. Farmer's wife chasing around mice with a butcher's knife and cutting off their tails. Well, this nursery rhyme allegedly tells a dark tale about the persecution of Protestants by the Catholics during the reign of Mary I.
Oh, that's interesting.
She was the Queen of England from 1553 to 1558 when she was executed. A devout Catholic, she attempted to restore the Roman Catholic Church property confiscated by previous Protestant monarchs, especially her father, Henry VIII. A lot of these kind of relate back to this time of Henry VIII. Her nickname was Bloody Mary because she killed so many Protestants during her reign. Mary disputed her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth's claim to the English throne. In the nursery rhyme, the three blind mice are thought to be three Anglican bishops called the Oxford Martyrs, who were accused of blindly following their Protestant beliefs. They were Hugh Latimer, one-time Bishop of Worcester. Oh, we talked about Worcester in a different episode, didn't we? Mm-hmm. I think that was one where the ghost was hiding in the basement or something. Nicholas Ridley, Bishop of London, and Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Mary, who in this nursery rhyme is the farmer's wife who cut off their tails with a carving knife, had these three men blindfolded and then burned at the stake for heresy in 1555 and 1556. The nursery rhyme can only be traced as far back as 1609 in printed form, 50 years after Queen Mary died, but it likely become oral tradition before that time.
Wow.
So I wonder if, they were singing about things that they were not really allowed to talk about in public.
Probably not at the time she was alive, but then after she was executed and then the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I came back on the throne, then it was okay to sing about until the power changed. Well, it didn't really change again after that. So,
but that's interesting because I mean, if everyone knew what it meant,
right?
I'm sure that made her very angry. But You can't hurt somebody or accuse somebody and convict somebody over singing about mice.
Right.
That's true.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's just farmer's wife and mice.
We were needing something to sing while we were drinking.
Exactly. And speaking of Mary, she shows up in this next one also. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row.
Well, now, I've always liked that one. Don't tell me that's subversive.
No, it's about Queen Mary, Bloody Mary also. She's contrary because she is trying to reverse the ecclesiastical changes wrought by the Protestant Church of England, founded by her father, King Henry VIII, and she wants the country to revert to Catholicism. You remember her father broke away from the Catholics because they would not allow him to divorce his wife, Mary's mother, and wed his mistress, Anne Boleyn. The garden refers to the graveyard in which all the Protestants she killed are buried. The phrase, how does your garden grow, asks how she adds to the corpses of her enemies to it. The silver bells and cockle shells are euphemisms for the instruments of torture that Mary used on them. Silver bells were thumb screws that crushed the thumb bones between two metal plates. That doesn't sound pleasant at all. Pleasant. And cockle shells were applied to a victim's genitals, causing pain.
Oh, that's even...
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
The pretty maids, all in a row, are thought to represent the chopping block or other means of execution, all lined up.
Wow, okay.
So not so pretty. But just don't think about that the next time you're singing it.
Well, let's take a break from nursery rhymes for a second. To talk about fables.
All right.
According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a fable is a short fictitious story, especially one intended to teach a lesson, and in which animals speak and act like human beings, or anthropomorphized.
Personification.
That's right. The best known fables are the ones attributed to Aesop, a slave and storyteller believed to have lived in ancient Greece between 620 and 564 BCE. Aesop's fables have survived all this time because each story represents a humble truth that is basic to human nature and applicable to anyone living in any era, so much so that the stories are timeless. We do know that the first printed version of Aesop's fables in English were published in March of 1484 by William Caxton. There are over 700 fables. I didn't know this until I was researching. Attributed to Aesop, and some of the best known ones are...
The Tortoise and the Hare,
The Tortoise and the Hare, The Lion and the Mouse. It's where the lion has a thorn in his paw and the mouse is able to get it.
Right.
Town Mouse and Country Mouse, and The Goose That Laid the Golden Egg, and so many more.
Right.
The stories were originally, and for centuries after, directed to an adult audience. It wasn't until the 18th century that fables made their way into nurseries and schoolrooms, but the moral lessons have been used in children's education ever since.
Right. Okay.
Now moving on to my favorite, fairy tales.
All right.
Fairy tales are such an integral part of growing up. When a child has a bedtime story read to them at night, most often it's a fairy tale, and many times the first books a child reads contains a fairy tale or two. And we can't talk about growing up with these familiar stories without acknowledging Disney.
Right.
Right. And the movies that they've produced over the years. Yes, it's true that Disney has watered down the original narratives because the fairy tales of old aren't what we would consider today to be child-friendly. In fact, the original stories would surprise and scare many children today, as there were often gruesome details involved.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But life was more dangerous in those centuries that came before, and a lot of these tales are warnings. According to an article by Amber Sparks for LitHub, which is for literaryhub.com, called The Useful Dangers of Fairy Tales, children were intuitive enough. And let me just quote, this is a quote. Children were intuitive enough to understand that while these stories were unreal, they were not untrue.
Right. There's some basic truth principles behind them.
Exactly. There is a very real warning at the heart of the stories. Sparks notes that mothers are very often missing from the stories. So if you think of the Disney movies.
Oh, the woodcutter, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're just, well, whether it's Rapunzel. Well, Rapunzel did have parents, but they were absent because she had been kidnapped. But Cinderella, Snow White, I mean, all of these are all without mothers.
Right. Well, I like the more recent version of Rapunzel called Twisted. Did you ever see that one?
No.
Oh, that's really funny. That's
no, I hadn't seen that.
You need to see Twisted.
The frying pan. Who knew?
Yeah. Good run, Phil.
But the absence of mothers really, it reflects a very real danger that women often died early, leaving children to navigate the world without her. And so many fairy tales, if you stop to think about it, were warnings for children facing real-life dangers, especially girl children. The old stories like Cinderella with the self-mutilating stepsisters, Beauty and the Beast, and Little Red Riding Hood with the murderous wolf at the door all have dire warnings against dangers a woman faced then and still face today. According to Sparks, quote, life was hard and short and brutish, particularly so for women, and yet even this late in history, women and girls are still friendly with that darkness where fairy tales operate best. The warnings still ring true as women still deal with abusive relationships, the danger of being stalked, harassed, and or assaulted. Women still have to be wary of the big bad wolf.
Yeah, you're right.
On a lighter note, though, just as you have said, many of the nursery rhymes and fairy tales that are so familiar to us existed long before they were ever written down. And it's because they were written down that they've survived this long to be enjoyed by us, our children, and our grandchildren. So let's talk a moment about those people who understood that the rich lore would eventually disappear into obscurity if not recorded onto paper.
Right.
No doubt you've heard about the Brothers Grimm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There was Jacob, who lived from 1785 to 1863, and his brother Wilhelm from just 1 year later, 1786 to 1859. They were gifted academically, but their father died when they were young, 11 and 10 years old. And Jacob and Wilhelm had to struggle to find ways to support themselves and their siblings financially. They were very innovative, and were always looking for opportunities to make some money and to be a little bit more stable financially. And that's how they got the idea of collecting and organizing German folk tales from the oral tradition.
Oh, right.
But it wasn't just about money, because as they began to do this, it became their passion and their lifelong project.
Keeping those recorded stories, or recording those stories that have been passed down.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they had a little bit of insight, because industrialization was starting to come about and changing the way life was. And they knew that these oral stories were going to disappear if they didn't collect them and write them down. So they started to do that. And again, like I said, it would become a lifelong passion for them.
Right.
So many of the stories that we know about today come from the efforts of the Brothers Grimm. A few of the most well-known stories we have to thank them for are Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel, yeah.
Rumpelstiltskin, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which, by the way, the dwarves never had names until Disney got a hold of it.
Well, yeah, they had to make them look cute.
Yeah, well, but they never had any names at all. Rapunzel and Cinderella.
Cinderella. Okay.
Another author responsible for many well-known fairy tales and a contemporary of the Brothers Grimm is Hans Christian Andersen.
Okay.
Andersen, however, didn't collect and record stories like the brothers. His fairy tales were his original writings.
Oh, wow.
And consisted of 156 stories across 9 volumes and has been translated into more than 125 languages. Andersen's most famous fairy tales that you'll recognize include The Emperor's New Clothes.
Right, that's a great story.
The Little Mermaid, The Steadfast Tin Soldier, The Princess and the Pea, The Snow Queen, The Ugly Duckling, The Little Match Girl, and Thumbelina. His stories have been ingrained into Western culture and have inspired ballets, plays, and animated and live-action films.
Yeah, he was from Denmark, and in Copenhagen Harbor, there is a nice statue of the Little Mermaid.
Oh, really?
You can go and visit, yeah. We can't really leave fairy tales, to me, and this wasn't written down, but I thought of it as we were going along here. You mentioned Disney, but one of my favorites when I was a kid was the Bullwinkle cartoons, which actually had a section called Fractured Fairy Tales. Do you remember those? They're hilarious.
Barely.
They were kind of an odd twist on a traditional fairy tale gone wrong somehow, and they're hilarious. You know, if you look up on YouTube sometime, Fractured Fairy Tales.
And you know what? I just got what you said. Haven't you seen the Disney version of Rapunzel called Twisted? It's not Twisted. It's Tangled.
Tangled. I'm sorry. Tangled.
And I'm like, no, I've never seen Twisted.
Tangled. I had it wrong. You're right. Tangled.
But I have seen Tangled.
Tangled.
So. I don't know if I would ever go see a Disney
in
movie.
The car
Twisted,
can
Tangled.
quit arguing whether it was twisted or
Twisted or
tangled.
Can
Because
you-
it's been answered.
Thank
Can you imagine a
I
Disney
did that on
movie?
purpose. Just make sure you folks were paying attention out there.
What do you got back there?
A Disney movie. It's twisted.
And everyone suddenly pops
Tangled.
open Disney Plus, and they're going through the whole list.
Twisted.
I
I
don't
don't see
find this
Twisted.
one.
They said it was there.
It must be in the vault. Oh man!
Okay. Let's
They don't bring
it
that
back.
one out anymore.
Right, that one stays in the back.
That one stays in the back.
All right. Back to nursery rhymes. You've got some more for us.
Well, we have an announcement here first, though, right?
Oh,
We doing the sponsor break?
Sponsor break.
yes, we are. If I can find it.
And now something completely different.
You're listening to Remnant Stew Podcast.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Halloween is over, and so is our Cemetery Crawl 2022 Tombstone Bingo Contest.
Yay!
Say that 5 times fast. people.
Right?
Well, we want to thank everyone out there who played along. We had participants from all over the country, all over the place. And so
That's right.
we want to announce our winners. Second runner-up is Paige Ross. Yay, Paige!
Congratulations.
And then there's first runner-up, and now this is a really important position because in case the grand prize winner can't fulfill their duties this year,
Obligations.
Like
the
they
first
have no
runner-up will have to
obligations.
step into those important shoes. But the first runner-up is, I'm going to say your name wrong, I'm sorry, it's Ron Wojnarowski. Uh-oh.
Wojnarowski,
yeah.
something like
Ron
that. When I pulled his
Wojnarowski.
name out, I was like,
would like to apologize.
Wojnarowski.
Pronounced incorrectly, but hey.
when I drew his name, I was like, yeah, no, let's put that back.
Wojnarowski.
Wojnarowski. And the
Right.
grand prize winner, congratulations, Gladys Kurt.
Yay, Gladys.
Congratulations, Gladys.
So many people commented on how wonderful it was to get outside and roam around cemeteries, soaking in the history and the beautiful etchings on the tombstones.
So here's to next year's Cemetery Crawl,
Woo!
when we do it even bigger and better.
Woohoo! Juan Grozowski. I'm always watching you, Juan Grozowski.
And we're back.
Yay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, anyway, now back to those terrific nursery rhymes. Here's a good one. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men failed to put Humpty together again. Okay, before I read what it's really about, I always loved the old Far Side cartoon that showed Humpty Dumpty laying there broken and the men trying to put him back together. And the caption says, the horses want another shot at it. The original
Far
writer.
Side. That's awesome cartoon. Those are awesome ones.
The original writer of Humpty Dumpty has been lost in the midst of time. What we do know is that the words Humpty Dumpty can be found in a dictionary for slang written originally by a Frenchman, Sorbier, in 1690, and published in English around the same time, but with a totally different meaning to the rhyme as we know it today.
Oh, really?
According to Sorbier, a Humpty Dumpty was a drink made with brandy boiled with ale.
Oh, okay.
And the word also described a clumsy, oafish person, perhaps someone who drank too many Humpty Dumpties.
Now, I can understand it meaning somebody that's very clumsy, but a
Right.
drink? Okay.
What we also know is that the rhyme was originally a riddle, and the listeners were supposed to guess what Humpty Dumpty was.
That's right.
What could fall off a wall and not be put back together, no matter what you did? Kings and horses and men. Well, if you think about it, there's nothing in the rhyme that describes him as an egg, but today Humpty Dumpty is usually pictured as a giant human-like egg. The verse has become a children's song, no longer a riddle.
Yeah, and I would just want to chime in and say that there's some posts going around the internet in the vein of being incredulous that the rhyme never mentions an egg. So we can't know for certain that Humpty Dumpty
It's glad to see technology
was an
being
egg.
used for noble purposes, don't you?
Right. As you said, the rhyme was originally posed as a riddle, basically presenting the Humpty Dumpty character as something that once broken can never be put back together again. You're supposed to figure out that it's an egg. And there's other riddles that came around, was out at about the same time that Humpty Dumpty did. And that goes like this, like little Miss Etticoat in a white petticoat with a red nose. The longer she stands, the shorter she grows. And it's a riddle. The answer is Phil, you got it?
The shadow?
No, it's a candle.
Oh.
So like a white candle. With her red nose is the flame. Or this one, 30 white horses upon a red hill. Now they tramp, now they champ, now they stand still.
Now they chomp, and now they stand still. And I know what that is.
What is it?
Your teeth.
Teeth, that's right. So there were a lot of rhymes like this. And so, yeah, Humpty Dumpty was never mentioned as an egg because you were supposed to figure it out.
Well, now, besides just being a riddle, there is also a historical story that relates to Humpty Dumpty. It may have been the name given to a cannon used at the siege of Colchester in the Second Civil War in England in 1648. According to a well-researched article by a fellow named Robert Hodkinson, during the siege, the cannon fell from its lofty perch. The steeple it had been placed in was not strong enough to withstand the blast, and it came tumbling down, collapsing the tower and killing the gunner.
Oh, wow.
This story and history was only written down during the mid-18th century from stories and tales of the locals of Colchester, and no mention was made to Humpty Dumpty in the writing. So although it's a good story, it can't be verified, but one of our mottos here is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, so, it's a cannon or it's a drink. Go to the bar and, hey, I need a Humpty Dumpty.
Or the drunken, clumsy guy with the hump.
Yes.
Humpty Dumpty on the rocks.
Right.
Neat.
Well, now, kind of along those same lines is the famous song, Pop Goes the Weasel. Now, this song started life as a popular dance tune in England. The earliest printed versions of the song was from 1853, so it's not that old. But originally it contained no lyrics at all except for the familiar Pop Goes the Weasel at the end. Those were the only words to it. The dance became extremely popular and featured on stage as well as in dance halls. By September of 1853, the title was being used as an idiom anytime something sudden or unexpected happened. For example, one of your pals would trip and fall, and their buddies would shout, "Hey, Pop Goes the Weasel, ha ha!"
Is that the equivalent of the tequila song?
Something like that.
That's so funny because when he said there was no words but Pop Goes the Weasel, that's exactly
Tequila!
what I was saying.
Right. Kind of like that.
That's my favorite karaoke song.
Anyway, there is evidence that the dance made it across the Atlantic in the 1850s, as American newspapers at the time called it the latest English dance. The phrase soon caught on in the States, too. It wasn't long before people in both countries began adding more lyrics to the song. Thus,
Lord.
English and American versions differ wildly.
Imagine that.
According to Wikipedia, in her autobiographical novel Little House in the Big Woods, published in 1932, American author Laura Ingalls Wilder recalled her father in 1873 singing of the lyrics, "All around the cobbler's bench, the monkey chased the weasel, the preacher kissed the cobbler's wife, pop goes the weasel."
Okay.
You heard that version?
Was that appropriate
Let's
for
just
children?
move on.
I don't know. You referring to the preacher as a weasel? I'm not sure. Or maybe his offspring. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Let's move on before we dwell there too long. In the early 1900s, the phrase beat around the mulberry bush was a common idiom for awaiting some task.
Wasn't that what we were just doing?
Yeah, somewhat.
I'm really good at procrastination.
Avoiding some task, yeah. It appears that mulberry bush made its way into the song. Today, the most common American version goes, "All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought it was all in good fun. Pop goes the weasel." Who the monkey is and who the weasel are and why the monkey is chasing the weasel is anyone's guess. Unless it was the cobbler and the preacher from the aforementioned part. The British version of the song appears to make a bit more sense. "Up and down the city road, in and out the eagle, that's the way the money goes, pop goes the weasel. Half a pound of tuppenny rice, half a pound of treacle, that's the way the money goes, pop goes the weasel." Okay, treacle is a syrup or molasses. So here's what this means. The Eagle is a pub on City Road in London, and it's still there today. A weasel in stout was Cockney slang for a coat,
Wait, weasel and stoat.
Weasel and stoat. Okay,
yeah, stoat is a weasel-like animal.
Yeah, stoat, S-T-O-E-T, I'm sorry. A weasel and stoat was Cockney slang for a coat and was often shortened to just weasel. The word pop was colloquial language for pawning something. So when the weasel goes pop, it means the coat is being pawned. The two verses together indicate that someone spent too much of their money buying drinks at the Eagle and thus had to pawn their coat to buy food. The Eagle Pub today bears a plaque that explains the song and the pub's connection to it. So
that's interesting. And I heard even another one that had something to do with weaving, and the pop goes the weasel is that tool that slides the textile through, the yarn through. So who knows?
But I like the Eagle version of it. Now here's another one. This one's not as well known in the United States, I don't think. Who killed Cock Robin? I, said the sparrow, with my bow and arrow. I killed Cock Robin. Who saw him die? I, said the fly, with my little eye I saw him die. Who caught his blood? I, said the fish, with my little dish I caught his blood. Who'll make his shroud? I, said the beetle, with my thread and needle I'll make his shroud. This delightful, that's debatable if it's delightful, little nursery rhyme, which deals at length, that's just the beginning of it. It goes on much longer than that. It begins, deals at length with the murder and funeral of Cock Robin and the various animals involved in the service. It's actually a mournful English folk song, and it ends with, all the birds of the air fell a-sighing and a-sobbing when they heard of the bell toll for poor Cock Robin. It was first published in 1744 in Tommy Thumb's Pretty Songbook, but there's evidence of it being older. It is similar to a story from 1508 by John Skelton called Philip Sparrow. Various theories try to explain who Cock Robin was in real life. Some say he was Robin Hood, while others maintain that the song is a parody of the death of King William III, who was killed by an arrow while out hunting one day. He was known as William Rufus, which means William the Red, and a cock robin has a red crest. So perhaps that was William's
that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
death dirge.
And now for something completely off topic and off kilter. Brace yourself for the oddity du jour.
For today's oddity, I have something about the ships of San Francisco.
All right.
San Francisco is one of the most populous cities in the state of California and even in the United States. It's located at the end of a peninsula that has the Pacific Ocean on its western shore and the expansive Bay of San Francisco on its eastern shore. You can't overstate how much the city's identity is tied to the water that surrounds it.
Right.
And what many people, including the residents of the city, don't know is that the shoreline has changed drastically over the years, and San Francisco was built up and over the remains of about 40 scuttled ships.
Ooh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Archaeologist, there we go.
That guy.
Archaeologist James Delgado has been studying San Francisco's ships for decades. Other cities, well, here's a quote, direct quote from him. Other cities have their claims to fame, but beneath our streets and sidewalks lie the bones of the Gold Rush City and the decks of ships once trucked by 49ers.
Wow.
The California Gold Rush began in 1849 and brought men to the area in search of fortune who were then nicknamed the 49ers. Back then, San Francisco had laws that granted land rights over where ships had sunk, and many men took advantage of this by running aground and then converting their ship into waterfront businesses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Other fortune seekers, other fortune seekers would rush to the area, quickly gather supplies, and head out on their expeditions, thus abandoning their ships in a frenzy to get to that California gold. Delgado started his research of these ships in 1978 with the excavation of the Niantic, one of the first whaling vessels bringing 49ers to the area in search of fortune. After being left behind during the gold rush, the ship had been repurposed to serve as a storefront, a saloon, and finally a hotel. Above the door cut into the vessel's side was the inscription, "Rest for the weary and storage for trunks."
Oh, well, that's nice.
Cool.
All of this, and it's funny because all of this happened in just 2 short years as the ship was burned down to the waterline by the Great Fire of May 3rd, 1851. The Niantic Hotel built on the site was also destroyed by fire in 1872 and replaced by the Niantic Building. which was destroyed in 1906 by an earthquake. The hull of the ship was rediscovered during a 1978 excavation for new construction and was found to still contain some wares in their hold from her storefront days.
Oh, wow.
Those wares included some champagne. The article doesn't say whether or not the champagne was open and drunk, but I think it would have been really a waste if it hadn't been.
If it was still tight, I suppose.
Yeah. Other ships that lie beneath San Francisco include the Apollo, discovered in the 1920s and excavated along with a gold nugget and some coins.
Ooh.
The General Harrison, lying beneath a Chinese restaurant. And the Candace, found in an area known to be a ship-breaking yard, where laborers, mostly Chinese immigrants, would dismantle ships to sell off the brass, copper, wood, and other items that could be repurposed. Another ship, the Rome, is located under the bocce ball courts in front of the ferry building, and a tunnel that the train currently passes through is made up of the boat's forward hull. The Maritime National Historic Park, the National Park Service, and its staff, along with various archaeologists, I said it right that time, have worked fervently to create and continuously update a map depicting the locations of all these historic wrecks that have been uncovered, as well as possible locations of other ships yet to be investigated. And I'll have a picture of that map on our social media.
Cool.
Wow.
And I got this info from Atlas Obscura, of course,
Yeah.
and a January 2020 article for thebolditalic.com called What Lies Beneath, the Ships Buried Under San Francisco by, I'm going to say Mr. Rusilla. I can't say his first name at all. Azucena. I bet that's it. Azucena Rusilla.
Really interesting. So we are educating and informing here today. Now, that's something I did not know. I've never been to San Francisco.
I haven't either.
I have.
All right, road trip.
It's
Remnants do road trip. We need to head out.
We
there.
need to go through.
Cool. It's a very cool town. At least to drive through it, walk through it. The harbor's the harbor.
I bet it's beautiful.
All the way around it. But yeah, it's very pretty.
We need to go through all of our episodes and
That's
check
right.
where we said road trip.
That's right.
And really map out a road trip.
Make it happen. Well, now back to those fabulous nursery rhymes. Dr. Foster went to Gloucester in a shower of rain. He stepped in a puddle right up to his middle and never went there again.
I've never heard of that one.
I have not either.
Probably more popular in England, or maybe even in Wales. The Dr. Foster who went to Gloucester is thought to be reference King Edward I of England, and the nursery rhyme is probably more than 700 years old.
Wow.
King Edward didn't like the Welsh and engaged in some brutal conduct towards them in a couple of wars. He was a temperamental, clever man, over 6 feet tall, which was unusual in his day. In fact, one of his nicknames was Longshanks, but he had several others too. The title Doctor referred to the king's reputation for learning and was usually applied to learned men of those days, not only members of the medical profession. Well, the story goes that King Edward I visited the town of Gloucester because of its strategic position at a crossing of the River Severn into Wales. The River Severn separates Wales from England. Arriving during a storm, he mistook a deep ditch for a shallow puddle, and he and his horse fell into it and became trapped in the mire. They both had to be hauled out by people, much to the king's embarrassment and fury, and so he vowed never to return again. Thus, the nursery rhyme is poking mocking fun at him by reminding people of his indignity. Well, it looked like a little puddle, and swoop, all he's down.
That makes me think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, that one night that's got the minstrels behind him. Brave, brave Sir Robin. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
There we go.
Everything reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Let's see if you can work that into this one. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating his Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, "What a good boy am I."
Now, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Jack Horner is a reference to a steward to the abbot of Glastonbury in England called Thomas Horner. The abbot sent him to London with a Christmas pie to be delivered to King Henry VIII. There he is again.
Yeah.
There.
The title deeds to 12 manor houses were allegedly hidden in the pie as surprise gifts. The abbot was trying to ingratiate himself with the king, who was busy dissolving the Catholic monasteries following his rift with the Pope. Well, Thomas Horner put his finger in the pie on the way there and extracted the deed for Mel's Manor, which he moved into shortly afterward. Thus, he opportunistically availed himself and his descendants of the manor house to which he was not entitled. Get this. His descendants, who still own Mel's Manor today, have disputed this besmirching of their ancestors' good name and claim he purchased the property fair and square from the king. So,
that's interesting.
To those descendants, if you're listening today, we will give you equal time to come on and present your case about your ancestor.
He probably
Thomas
asked the king
Horner.
for it as payment to deliver.
Yeah,
right,
the pie.
Right.
Yeah, 10%
Wink, wink,
delivery
nudge,
fee. Yeah.
I'm just stuck on how you have documents in a pie. But whatever.
Maybe wasn't a lot of juice in it. I'm not sure. How that would work.
I mean, there wasn't.
Maybe
like,
it's just a crust, and then the documents are inside.
With the layer on top.
Yeah,
of it.
layer on top.
maybe
That's probably
in a Ziploc bag, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
something like that.
ziplocked. Yes.
All right, now speaking of England, London Bridge is falling down. Falling down. London Bridge is falling down. My fair lady. This goes back to 1659, and it was so popular, many countries have their own version of it. One theory says that it originated from the destruction of a bridge in 1014 by a Viking who later became King Olaf II of Norway. If this is true, then this song has roots going back over 1,000 years.
Wow.
Olaf tied ropes to the pilings and rowed downstream, causing the fragile bridge and the defenders standing on it to fall into the River Thames. However, even though the bridge was destroyed, the Vikings were not able to take the city. It is thought that the Virgin Mary, a.k.a. My Fair Lady, protected the city from destruction. Another far more sinister theory is that the song refers to the burial of a child in the bridge's foundation due to the superstition that a human sacrifice was necessary to stop it from collapsing. Archaeological evidence does not support this theory, as human remains have not been found in the bridge's foundation.
Oh, but that was a superstition, and it was practiced.
Now, most of the ones that we've read up until now, we don't know who originated them. But this one we do know. Unlike other nursery rhymes, whose writers have disappeared in the midst of time, the alphabet, or ABC song, has a known writer. Boston publisher Charles Bradley was the first person to publish the ABC song in 1835. Now, he had kind of a mouthful of a name for it. He called it, quote, the ABC, a German air with variations for flute with an easy accompaniment for the pianoforte.
Oh, right.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, that went over well.
Yeah. The song has become known simply as the ABC, or the alphabet song.
Okay, wait. So he wrote the song as the ABC song,
Right.
not Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Well, it's the same verse.
Right,
It's the
same melody.
Same melody. He applied those melodies to.
Okay.
And it was also, Twinkle, and,
There's another song. I can't think of it, but there's another song
another
with
one with the same melody. I thought I had it written here, but anyway. Bradley credited the musical arrangement to 18th century composer Louis L'Amory. The tune is based on a Mozart composition called "Oh, What Will I Tell Your Mama?" That doesn't really sound like Mozart, does it?
No, that sounds like a country and western song.
You might be interested to know that similar ABC songs exist in other languages. You can find these on YouTube.com. Also, Ms. Belrose points out that Australians and Canadians often pronounce the letter Z as Zed. Their version of the song utilizes the corresponding pronunciation. Two other nursery rhymes utilize the same melody. Oh, here it is. The alphabet song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and...
Ba Ba Black Sheep.
Ba Ba Black Sheep.
That's what it is.
That's right. Ba Ba Black Sheep.
Well, back to fairy tales. I have some fairy tale facts for you. And you said this earlier, I think. The Oxford English Dictionary dates. No, you were talking about nursery rhymes. The Oxford English Dictionary dates the expression fairy tale back to 1635 and fairy story slightly later.
Right.
Even though the fairy tales go back way before that. The opening words, once upon a time, are even older, dating back to Chaucer in the 14th century.
Once upon a time.
The phrase meant that time, place, and people in the story are not as important as the point of the story. The story could take place in any era and the message still ring true.
Right.
In the old version, Snow White's jealous mother was planning to cook and eat her lungs and liver.
Wow. Not nice.
Yeah. A
pleasant.
lot of those. And it's funny that the brothers Grimm had these grim fairy tales.
Imagine that.
Um,
Maybe that's where the word grim comes from.
You know what? It might. It might actually come from that. Recent research claims that the stories of Beauty and the Beast and Rumpelstiltskin may date back as far as 4,000 years.
Wow.
And we mentioned this before, fairy stories only became associated with children in the mid-19th century. Another fact is that in one of the earliest tellings of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Goldilocks isn't a cute little girl. Instead, she's a foul-mouthed old woman.
Now, that sounds more like the fractured fairy tales I was talking about earlier.
And I never liked Goldilocks anyway. She was so self-entitled. So it makes sense that she'd be a foul-mouthed old woman. Some scholars believe that the first telling of Little Red Riding Hood, which is my favorite fairy tale, actually originated in East Asia and was called the Tiger Grandmother.
Tiger Grandmother, okay.
The version of Little Red Riding Hood by the brothers Grimm has the wolf devouring the heroine and her grandmother. The huntsman then rescues them by disemboweling the wolf and sews rocks into his belly.
Yep, I've heard that version.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah. I guess he didn't chew them. He just swallowed them whole because they popped out okay, it seemed like.
Well, and a lot of stories, I think, were like that. They were kind of cartoonish that way.
Yeah.
That and making the animals seem more human.
Right.
So
True.
big enough to do so.
And finally, The Beauty and the Beast was said to be a symbolic tale to teach young girls the advantages of arranged marriage. Oh, that's kind of deep. Anyway, I got my information from express.co.uk and dramakidsalbany.weebly.com.
All right, how about some more nursery rhymes here? As we mentioned earlier, Bob, Bob, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for my master, and 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives in the lane. Well, wool, you see, was tremendously important to the economy of England in the Middle Ages. And in fact, wool exports today are still a significant contributor to the UK economy. There's a lot of sheep in England. The Great Custom was a tax that was paid on wool and introduced in England in 1275. The tax continued to be served until the 15th century. Scholars generally agree that this is where the nursery rhyme comes from. However, it can only be traced back to 1744 in its printed form. The black sheep is being interrogated, probably by the tax collector, thus, have you any wool? The Great Custom decreed that the price of a bag of wool was to be split 3 ways. 1 for the king, the master, 1 for the church, the dame, and 1 for the farmer. The last line, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane, is more modern than the original, which was, and none for the little boy who lives down the lane, meaning that sheep farmers had nothing left for themselves after paying the tax. Perhaps the king and church had taken more than they were supposed to. An alternative theory to this nursery rhyme suggests that it is connected to the slave trade, as it uses the words black and master. It's an interesting theory, but there's not any solid evidence that connects the two.
That's interesting. I never knew that. I have always loved that nursery rhyme, and I have never heard that. That's interesting.
Now, here's a good one. Georgie, Porgy, Puddin' Pie kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie, Porgy ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Georgie Porgy was most likely King George IV, the highly obese son of King George III, who lived from 1762 to 1830. King George III was the king that the United States broke away from. This is his son, who was king after him. He was constantly mocked for the corsets he wore in an attempt to slim down his appearance. In 1824, he weighed 245 pounds. It was really heavy for that time. And his corsets had a 51-inch waist. Women who attended his parties were advised not to be caught alone with him because of his tendency to treat them with disrespect, going back to your comment earlier about the big bad wolf. He had several illegitimate children and mistresses and was accused of bigamy. He had an official wife that he detested and an unofficial wife that he couldn't marry because she was a commoner. King George IV was widely despised for his physical and emotional cowardice. Evidence when he fled from a prize fight in which one contestant died because he was scared that he would be caught up in the fallout. That's why he ran away when the boys came out to play.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that one either.
That's crazy.
How about one more? Goosey, goosey, gander, Whither shall I wander? Upstairs and downstairs and in my lady's chamber. There I met an old man who wouldn't say his prayers, so I took him by his left leg and threw him down the stairs. All right, we're going back to Queen Mary again here. Goosey Goosey Gander is not really just a funny little tale about wandering upstairs and downstairs and in my lady's chamber. Maybe on the surface that's what it seems like, but some say that it harks back to when King Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth persecuted Catholic priests. It was so bad they had to hide in secret cavities called priest holes in the walls of wealthy sympathizers' houses. If they were caught saying the rosary or other Catholic prayers, they could be arrested and even executed. According to Wikipedia, another possible interpretation of this nursery rhyme refers to the spread of STDs. Goose was a word that used to be slang for prostitute. To be bitten by the goose meant to be showing visible signs of STDs. Being thrown down the stairs referred to the painful death that often accompanied social diseases.
That's crazy. I remember I had a record when I was a little girl that had all of these nursery rhymes on it. And I remember that one thinking, and I remember being little thinking, that is such a weird nursery rhyme. Like, why would you take somebody by the left leg and throw him down the stairs?
What's wrong with his right leg?
Yeah, I don't know. When you mentioned records, you all are too young to remember this, but when I was a kid, they used to sell little 78s or smaller records
versions of them
that you had to play at a higher speed than an LP. So your record player had a little thing to slide to make the turntable go faster. And there were always these yellow records. I remember I had a bunch of them that they were pretty strong vinyl because they knew kids were going to be playing with them too, stronger so than the regular records. And I just remember that they had a lot of these same fairy tales and songs on them. Well, once again, we wish to express our appreciation to Samantha Belrose of NurseryRhymesCentral.com for allowing us to quote from her article.
Thank you very much.
We encourage you to check out NurseryRhymesCentral.com for more in-depth information. We kind of really just scratched the surface of what she has there about these and other nursery rhymes.
And now it's time, boys and girls, for the Trivia Challenge.
Okay, it's time for that trivia challenge. You know how this works. Like and follow our Facebook page at Remnant Stew Podcast. Like and share this episode post. Put your answer to the trivia challenge question in the comments of that post. The first person to do all that will be the winner. We love winners around here. And will be mentioned in an upcoming episode of Remnant Stew. However, we are also doing something a little new. We are opening our trivia challenge up to school kids. So pay attention back there on the back row, kids. Yeah, stop that slapping her. Put your hands down. If your classroom listens to Remnant Stew and they want to answer the trivia question, send us an email with their answer to staycurious@remnantstew.com. If your class wins, we will send a nice little care package to the class.
Okay, this one comes from Harbin. What 3 dark events did Disney take out of the original story of Pinocchio? And this is something I had never heard before. I never knew the original story of Pinocchio.
Right.
But
ouch.
Very interesting.
Wow.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with us. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Remnant Stew Podcast. You can also send us an email to say hi or to suggest a topic for a future episode at staycurious@remnantstew.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Remnant Stew is a part of Rook and Raven Ventures and is created by me, Leah Lamp. Dr. Judy Meeker and I research, write, and host each episode, along with commentary by Philip Sinquefield, our audio producer. Theme music is by Kevin MacLeod with voiceover by Morgan Hughes. Special thanks goes out to Judy Meeker and Harbin Gold.
Thank you.
Now, before you go, please hit the follow button so you won't miss an episode. Head over to Apple Music and leave us a review. We love reading those reviews. Share Remnant Stew with your friends, your family, the Grimm brothers if you happen to run into them. Until next time, remember to choose to be kind and always stay curious.